digital workflows, or workflows in general, are very misunderstood. The software is really what is the value add on top of the hardware. That's what actually allows you to get the efficiency that many of the hardware manufacturers tell you you can get. The only way you're going to get that is if you've got a good workflow.
Well, it's about to be 11 a.m. Eastern time. Isn't that correct, Deborah?
It is absolutely correct, Morton.
And I would like to welcome both, of course, you, David, as our. I think that if it was like a real event, you would be called the keynote because you're the first and the most important person here in this audience, right?
That's what my wife tells me all the time.
And then, Deborah, the bigger issue is that then you become the second most important person. That is not really what you like, is it?
Well, there are certain people I default to. Mr. Zwang is one of them for sure.
Okay, I like that. It's always good to know your visiting time and know when to be humble, right? So yeah, that's a tricky one. So as people are attending, I would like to thank you, David, very much for being part of the Smart Factory. I would say that with your knowledge and your experience and your work as a consultant, but also being involved with the Ghent work group, I think that this subject lives in your veins, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it's part of my DNA. Actually, it has been most of my life. We've spoken before, and workflow process. That's what I live through that and for that. At some point, I'll retire and probably still think.
Really, I never thought you would do that.
I didn't say now. I didn't say tomorrow. I said something.
David, while people are coming in, maybe you could let everybody know a bit about the Ghent Work Group. It's one of the most underutilized assets in the printing industry, and you have been championing it for many, many years.
Oh yeah, so Ghent Work Group is an amazing organization, and it's really about a lot of what we're talking about here today in terms of the Smart Factory. The Ghent Work Group, our organization, takes some of the brightest minds in the industry, and we get together and we look at, and we've been doing this for about 20 years now, and we look at, okay, so what in order to get to what at that point 20 years ago wasn't called the Smart Factory, it was called Lights Out. And we were going to get into lights out manufacturing. What did we need to do? How are we going to do this in such a way where we can have the systems talk to each other in a very transparent way, and ensure that the output is what we're looking for. Again, optimize the manufacturing processes, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we do. And we have some amazing people, amazing software developers, hardware developers, analysts, consultants, and we get together and put the stuff out there for the industry to read, to learn from. We have working with a lot of universities now around the globe, and that's increasing, and that's great for us because ultimately that's the legacy. That's where it's all going to go anyway. And if we can get them educated and they want to be hungry for it, and they don't have all the other baggage behind them.
I can't help thinking about David, because I mean, as you know, the subject for the entire week is Smart Factory or Industry 4.0. I mean, it has a lot of different names to it. It's essentially the same. It's about automation and also about the digital mindset. So it's also not only technology, it's also business, and I would say it's a philosophy as well, right? I was thinking that when you talk about the Ghent Work Group, how do you see the relationship between, let's say, IoT in general terms, Ghent Work Group, the SIP community, and all these organizations that, you know, it has similar kind of directions of work, but not really the same thing. How do you see that interaction between you guys?
Well, so we first of all, a lot of the people who sit on all of these different organizations are the same people.
Okay,
and
so it's just an excuse to have good wine and a beer from time to time, and then travel around the world. Is that what you do?
only go back to that, but no, it's in all honesty, there are individual focuses, and not all the same people are on all the same organizations, but there's a lot of crossover, and that's actually a good thing. We try not to step on each other's toes. We try to enhance each other and build off of what each other are doing, because 1 + 1 can equal 3 or 4, and that's really the way we look at it.
A follow-up question, that one, because as you say that you try to support each other, which I think makes sense, of course. But if you look at it from, let's say, if you look at the SIP4 community, and if you look at Ghent Work Group, this is kind of industry gathered, textured kind of things together, right? But if you look at the IoT, that is a way broader community, because it refers to manufacturing of all kinds of technologies and all kinds of products and things like that. Is there connection also in how you get the information and how you share information with a broader industries, broader industries?
Absolutely. First of all, printing is manufacturing, and increasingly printing is becoming more a part of manufacturing, just as it is more a part of marketing, etc. I mean, it's always been there, but it kind of stood up by itself. But there's been a tremendous amount of integration that's been going on. So we actually bring in people when we need some expertise, when we need, where does it hurt? We call people in. We call in consumer product companies when we want to understand the way that the needs of packaging of a consumer product manufacturer, the packaging trauma that they go through. Where do they see their future? How can we help them get there? We do the same thing. We did it with publishing. We did it with sign and display, and when we look at other forms of manufacturing, we're all, because of the internet, because of things like XML, because the data sharing is now becoming kind of the lingua franca of all of us. So it's really more a matter of, okay, how can we work together to get that to happen? And we do that on a regular basis.
Sounds fantastic. Another thing I would like to, now we're still having attendees coming in, another thing I would like to ask you, David, because you are here also in your capacity as a writer for What They Think, and we're so happy that What They Think support this event, of course, and even more that they also ask you to participate on their behalf. How is it to be a journalist and a consultant in the printing industry in relation to get this message across about all these new technologies?
So I've always considered myself an educator, and this goes way back to when I had my printing businesses and my pre-press businesses. Yes, I was a business owner, etc., but I was an educator, and I brought people in and I worked with them, and I educated them. I educated my customers and the marketplace, and so it's just another vehicle. It's another way for me to get the word out, to get the education out. So I write, and the information gets published and distributed, and that's it.
I do understand that, but I was more thinking that, you sometimes you have to think about that people can consume this information, right? Because I think that sometimes when I talk to the people from Chili Publish and from InFocus and from Ultimate Technographics, I always say to them, but your software, maybe it becomes easier to use, but the complexity of what it does becomes more and more difficult. So, I mean, the learning curve might be a little bit more steep to some, at least, right?
It's interesting when I've been very fortunate in that I've been riding the technology wave in this industry since the 70s. And
really?
Yes. And I could talk about the 60s, but we won't go there. We do that in the bar sometime. But
yeah,
no,
let's do that.
I've been kind of riding this technology wave, and what's been interesting is that we've always found these obstacles, and the obstacles usually were around how do we get and train people and get the skills to be able to achieve what's necessary to make things happen. And as technology came in, there was this leveling, if you will, that occurred where the technology was developed in such a way to try to offset some of that requirement of skill, if you will, and it did to an extent. However, as it gets more complex, again, there will be a need to increase the level of smart in the technology, which is something that's been going on for years. Will continue to go on, and it will continue to kind of leapfrog itself. But ultimately, if I look at where we're going, and a good friend of mine, Marco Bohr, has projected that if you look at the population increases and how it's been slowing down over the years, there's going to be a point at which we're going to have a problem reaching enough people to even support what we're all doing. So technology is going to actually have to become play a very important role in this.
And talking about supporting things, Deborah and you have known each other for a long time. How did you get along? How did you get to know each other? I'm just curious because I can't remember the story if any of you have told me.
David Zwang, he was probably just, from events and things like that. But to David's point about being an educator, unfortunately for him, he's the first person I call when I have questions because David and I have developed a language where he knows how to explain it to me. And if you think about cave drawings, that's what we go down to when we speak about this type of stuff, because, as we know, I'm not the technology person, but what I'm interested in. And, I know that we want to start one, but I do have a question before I take off. And that's kind of to tack on to something Morton just said about, there's a crawl, walk, run here of slowly leading people to this, let's call it this digital transformation. And I think that crawl's been going on for quite a while, but Corona has frying pans crawl to the head. And we're probably more in, oh my God, running around with chickens without heads as opposed to having a plan. So to Morton's point, how do we kind of get the business owners in line here that, this is the future. In every other industry, it's automation and it's coming here.
Yeah, I think in all fairness to our industry, other industries are going through the same issue. So it's not just us. But I think that you can't push somebody into this. It's funny. I just finished an article which will go out tomorrow, interestingly enough, because I've been talking about digital transformation, but in packaging, and packaging has been relatively slow in comparison to commercial print to move to digital transformation for a lot of reasons. Okay. And I can't go into all of them now, but you read the articles, you'll see, but the, you can't push somebody into it. It's like anything else. They have to understand that there is a need. Now, how will they understand it? So I've developed a lot of plans for a lot of companies over the years, automation, system optimization, etc. And the ones who were already into this, who were doing it, when this hit, it was like, okay. And they barely skipped a beat. They just kept going and they just went from home because there was a lot of automation. There was a lot of things that were already done. Integration was there, etc. Interestingly enough, I had new customers that called me when this thing hit. And instead, normally I would go on site to somebody's plant and I would help them get it together. In these cases, I couldn't go on site. So we actually used the technology to do it remotely. They kind of got up and up to speed and off they went. So there are people who understand that. I think there are people who understand it. I think that the biggest problem is that people don't either have the bandwidth or the internal skills to be able to make some of this happen. And they're too busy just getting the work out.
And
That's
there-
and that's
yeah.
and that becomes a distraction. It's a necessary distraction,
Yeah.
but you got to do both. You
Yeah.
can't just say, yeah, well, we'll get the work out and we'll just be kind of limping along while everybody else flies by us.
No,
That's how it
100%.
is. Yeah.
Okay, so
You're
resume this.
going to be there chatting while I'm trying to give a
Well,
presentation.
I might be doing social media and other stuff like that too. So, Morton, you just want me to close my browser window
Yeah,
now, correct?
you just close your browser
Okay,
window.
I'll be
Yeah.
back in the chat.
All right,
See you
we'll
in
see
a-
you later.
see you in a
again.
minute.
So, David, it's almost your turn now, because you're going to give a presentation. And the thing that I asked you to talk about was, what is the smart factory or Industry 4.0? Are you comfortable with that that job?
I think I can handle it. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. You just click on the slides, and then I will close off my camera and my microphone, but I will be listening to you all the time. So I will be back when you are finished with your presentation.
Thanks, Morton. And off we go.
Off we go.
So, welcome to all of you. And yeah, my topic, as Morton said, is kind of what is the smart factory. But I think that, you know, when we look at it, well, first, for those of you who don't know me, we talked a little bit about it. And I'm just going to skip right through this rather quickly. I have been involved in process and business analysis, automation, engineering, and strategic development of firms in printing, packaging, and publishing for quite a few years now. They're measured in decades. And I'm also the chairman of the Ghent Work Group, and I sit on a lot of other standards bodies. So I kind of move around a lot and have this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So the question then becomes, before we talk about what is a smart factory? Well, why do you need a smart factory? And I think that becomes, as we were just talking before, and Deborah said, well, how do you get people kind of off the dime on this thing? And so let's talk about some things here. Okay, so this is Smithers Pyra, and thanks to all my buddies over there. So this is a look at print growth between 2000 and projected down to 2025. And one of the things you can see here is that, yes, there's still there's growth there. But every time there's been an event, like in 2008, you notice that, things were growing till 2008. All of a sudden there was an event, and that event was the recession. Right. And all of a sudden, because of the recession, people found other ways to get things done. And the amount of prints or printing actually got reduced a bit. Okay. And it was moving along. It reduced a little bit again until where we are today, our pandemic, 2020, another drop off. And it's going to come back up again, but it'll never come back to where it was in 2008. And probably it may get to where we were in 2019. But in any case, what that means is it's going to be a very competitive future. So you need to look for ways to be able to get the most out of what you're doing, optimize your processes and your margins. Now, a lot of this is driven by transformational trends, okay? Consumer distribution and behavior. I mean, think about it. As a consumer, and we're all consumers, right? Things have been changing, and it's not really just the pandemic. Online shopping has been going on for years, and it has been increasing. Yes, in Western countries, it started rather early, or compared to some of the emerging economies. But if you look at it on a global basis, you'll see that this has been going on for quite a while, and it's growing even further now around the globe. So this is something that is specifically transformational, and it's not just because of an event. Online shopping, buying online, picking up in the store, big box stores, sustainability. People are much more reliant and concerned, especially when we look at the millennials and the Gen Zs, the Gen Xs, the Gen Zers. They are much more aware of and concerned about how we treat where we live on this big blue globe, the big blue ball, how we treat it and how we're going to leave it for the next generation. We're also seeing this move towards more personal experiences. Mass customization. That's already that's ingrained in what we're doing now. You look at the catalogs that come to you, or the types of catalogs that come to you, and they are targeted based on what you buy, who you are, because they know who you are. The information's out there. And personalization, even down to the level of one-to-one, which is beginning to start hitting. And more of that will come. Now, in order for things like that to happen, you need to have development technology. You need digitization, and you do need Industry 4.0. And we'll talk about what that means. A lot of it is really about e-business, right? Because it's now that we've got this new platform called the cloud, it's a way for us to all communicate, and as a result of that, we need to develop new standards and practices to utilize the cloud and facilitate the kinds of things we've been talking about. Ultimately, what that allows us to do is coordinate not just the business processes between buyers and sellers, but the production processes throughout. If we were to look at print, there's a lot of different people print different things, and they have different kinds of products, but I really have broken it down in my mind into two prime differentiators. Okay, and the reason I did that is they really affect competition and margins. If you look at them each in these segments. So first, I look at printed products, and printed products I look at the predefined, things like constrained design, catalogs, books, business cards, the things that are fairly structured in terms of the way they are manufactured. And those are the ones that those types of products are the ones that actually are very competitive in their nature. Those are the things you see in a lot of web to print types of applications, etc. And then there's this other one called printing services. And printing services is really where the value add comes into play. Ad hoc designs, a lot of different types of designs that are not always the same structure. They're different. They can be different. They could become part of a manufacturing process even, and require variable production techniques. Those types of the printing services are actually where the higher margins are and the higher opportunities are. So then the question becomes, can you bring Industry 4.0? How can you bring this technology to play in both of these areas? And you can, and I have in the past, and it is possible. Much easier in the printed products category than printing services, but it can be done in printing services as well. Ultimately, Industry 4.0 is about collaboration. Both internal and external. And the collaboration is really the gateway, if you will, to a smart factory. That's what a smart factory is. Again, I mentioned before, I've been doing this and riding this technology wave in this industry since the 70s. And as a result, I look at things in a more holistic way. I'm still a hippie at heart. I don't have as much hair as I used to have, but I'm still a hippie at heart. And so I like to look at this in a very holistic way, and I have been for many, many years. As a matter of fact, this is a diagram that I helped put together as part of a study that was done for Premier back in 2011, but it's actually based on something I did in the early 90s for Seamold. And what it does is it takes a look at this, again, a holistic view. What are we really doing? If I look at a plant, a production plant, and that's that lower horizontal line there where we have the actual process itself, okay, the production process itself and all the different steps along the way. And then I start to build on that. Okay, because before we brought technology into it, the production was there, and the process management really as a function of data communication, if you will, or control, was not really there. It was a matter of people who did it. But now we've got the ability to have systems do it. So the process manager becomes a system that actually helps facilitate production. And the business and information, well, that's there because that has to, because that's really where the orders come in. That's where the billing happens. That's where we know whether we're making money or not. That's how we market ourselves, etc. And those three, you'll notice that, and then of course on top of that, we've got the external interface, because the reality is that none of these companies, there are no printers that operate in a vacuum. They have customers, they have partners, they have suppliers. All of these people, all of these different organizations work together to make all of this happen. And that's why we have these little arrows that go between them, and it's bi-directional. And that's really what Industry 4.0 is, because you if you're a printer, or if you're a design house, an agency, a marketing firm, whatever, you actually have the individual production processes may be different a little bit, but you actually have all of this. And your customers have all of this. And your partners and suppliers have all of this. So all of these things need to communicate if you want them to get to the point where you are able to deal with, as I said earlier, and what we used to call lights out manufacturing and business, which is really the future of it. This is really where the systems, I need print. How do I know I need print? Because I'm in packaging, and I'm a manufacturer, and I know that I've got a line of production that's of a specific product that's going to happen, and that means, and I know how much I'm going to produce. That means I need certain things for my suppliers. Well, my system will actually contact the suppliers, tell them what I need. That, in fact, will then go through the external interface, go down, control, and add it to the schedule of the production to make sure it happens, to make sure that you get there. That's what Industry 4.0 is. Bobst, who, if you're into packaging, or even if you're not, you've probably heard the name before. Bobst actually came out with a new system to help control all of their equipment, and to tie it all together, and not just to tie it together as equipment within itself, but also to tie it together within for their customers, to communicate with their customers. Same type of thing. So, again, I said before, it's internal collaboration, external collaboration. So in this case, it's developing these systems that collaborate so that the equipment can collaborate together, but also externally, so it can communicate and collaborate with the other people who are involved in the chain, in this value chain. Ultimately, today we're working with disparate systems, and disparate systems demand agnostic kinds of workflows. And whether it's the thing I just showed you that Bobst had put together, ultimately what's becoming a big part of everybody's manufacturing businesses and just businesses, service businesses, is the fact that we now need to communicate with data. It's really all about communicating data and shifting it back and forth. And things like pipeline automation, especially rules-based pipeline automation, allow it to happen, and allow it to happen in a very automated fashion. I had mentioned earlier that I do a lot of this type of work, and I have been doing this for years, and put together and engineered systems for different companies, book manufacturers, book producers, publishers, government organizations, service providers, etc. And really what it is, we start to look at, if you look out in your plant, forget about your customer now, just look in your plant and look at the brand on each one of the machines that you're running out there, and look at the front end of it. It's critical that all of these things communicate. And because they all came from different manufacturers, the chances of them being able to communicate in a very agnostic and efficient way is very difficult. It's just very difficult. So you need a more open and agnostic solution. And this is, and you're seeing more and more of these now. This is probably the penultimate solution. This is InFocus Switch. And basically, using InFocus Switch, you can tie anything together. You can tie any of the different disparate pieces of equipment and processes that you may come across. You can tie them together. And as I said earlier, if you were listening to the discussion with Morton and Deborah, XML becomes the lingua franca. That becomes the way to communicate, whether it's through APIs, et cetera. It really is. We've gotten down to the level of what we need to do is we need to communicate this information, map it so that it can talk. So one machine then talks to another, communicates, and that's how we move ahead. That is Industry 4.0. Now, so what do? Well, you need to retool, perhaps. Perhaps you don't need to retool completely. As a matter of fact, one of the things I do when I go into a company, because many companies, the first thing they're afraid to get into and look at automation because they figure they're going to have to throw out everything and start over again. And you don't necessarily have to do that. You have to reinvent to a degree. You have to reinvent the way you think about what you're doing, but you don't necessarily have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, as they say. If we look, for example, at some of the newer technologies that are out there, everything is becoming automated, right? Even the analog technologies are becoming more digitized. You know, if we look at the presses that are here, and I remember buying my first Heidelberg back in the mid '80s, actually the early '80s, and you know, it looked very similar to this, but it's not. They're different machines. You know, functionally they're very similar, but the levels of control and the level of communication that's been built into it, internal communication as well as external communication, is amazing. And you know, in all fairness, given the fact that there's a lot of increase in digital technology, digital print, whether it's toner-based print or inkjet, that can handle the short runs that we were talking about before, to handle mass customization and the other requirements that are there. These analog machine manufacturers, in order to compete, need to be able to add that digitization so that they can compete, and they are. And it's actually very interesting to see how things are moving in this direction. You know, in terms of toner, it's amazing the variety of toner presses that exist out there, the electrophotographic presses that exist out there, and they still encompass the vast majority of digital print that happens today. If you look at where digital printing, and people say, oh, it's digital printing, and this is the vast majority of where it's happening. It's happening in EP types of presses. Now, inkjet is the new guy on the block, if you will. Yes, it's been around for a while, but it hasn't been around that long, and it's just now really starting to find its home and its strengths and its area of strengths. And there's a lot of different companies that manufacture inkjet heads and inkjet ink, and this is just a few of the ones that are out there. But the other thing that inkjet is doing is, it's not just looking at print as print as we see it today, and looking to replace a lot of the things that the toner presses are doing, or that the analog presses are doing. It's also looking at driving integrated manufacturing. Because when I take a look at what I can do with an inkjet head, I can be a consumer product company who has a filling line where I manufacture my product and I fill the product. I can put inkjet heads in that line, and actually, instead of making a label, I can actually print directly onto the product, or I could print a label that's right there in the manufacturing process. All of these kinds of things, I could start printing I can actually start printing things that are printheads. If you look at this moving printhead, the blue one down here in the corner, that is 3D printed. I mean, think about the kinds of things that this will drive in terms of innovation going forward. And all of this innovation, you know, it sometimes it doesn't run, it walks. Debs was talking before about crawling, walking, and running. So hybrid solutions are a way to get kind of to try to get the best of both worlds as all these new technologies and the adoption of these technologies tend to grow and be adopted. And they allow things like bespoke solution. Remember before I said that you know, you have printed products and you have printed solutions, and you have solutions. And if you're going to do printed products, you got to be very, very cost effective and efficient in how you do it. And a lot of these bespoke solutions, these are two different manufacturers now, HP and Zycon, that actually have pouch factories. And for about $3 million or less, if you've got a great product, you can actually build a pouch factory that will allow you to package your product in line. Or if you're just someone who wants to offer it as a service to people who manufacture, because now there's a lot of different boutique manufacturing companies that manufacture small products and foods, etc. This is great. What a great, very efficient, targeted way to manufacture pouches in a very cost-effective way. So this is how you begin to compete in a very competitive landscape. So what are the most important process concepts of a smart factory? First of all, it's a manufacturing mentality. Got to be a manufacturing mentality. Yes, we all think of ourselves as artists and artisans and craft people, but at the end of the day, yes, that's important, but you have to have a manufacturing mentality. You have to ensure that you automate your processes as much as you possibly can, and that doesn't mean you do it all at once. It's something that you can do and evolve and bring in and continue to expand over time. And you have to remember that collaboration, also known as integration, is critical internally within your individual plant, but also externally with your customers and your suppliers, etc. It may sound easier than it is. It really isn't that difficult. But one of the things that I tell my customers, as some of you may have heard this before, but technology is easy and people are hard. Adoption is really a function of adaptation. You need to be willing to adapt what you're doing to the new realities in order for you to truly be able to adopt these new processes, etc. So with that, Morten, I think I'm ready for questions.
Is that really so? David, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation here. And why don't we just dig into it? A person with a name RRRCCZ is requesting to speak. So why don't we just invite that person to see what's on his or her agenda, right?
Oh.
I can't say so much that initially the person asked the question in the beginning, said, "Good morning. What about the security features in digital transformation? Nowadays, lots of threats in hackings. How to overcome?" That's something that you recognize in also in your work when you talk about all these digital transformation. Does it open a lot of doors for illegal activities, or how do you see that?
Well, yeah, there's no look. It's something you have to be aware of. You know, if you build a plant, a new production facility, you don't put locks on the doors, the chances are somebody's going to walk in. Okay. The good news is that data security is not new. There are many, many, many companies. There are many solutions that exist out there that this is their area of specialty. I mean, I do a lot of, I told you, I do a lot of work with very large consumer product companies, manufacturers, the government. Is security important? Yes, of course it's important. And it will, and there are always going to be people who are going to try to step it up one notch and find ways to get in. And you have to be smarter or hire somebody to work or work with somebody to help you maintain that. But to be afraid that that security is an issue, and that's a reason why you shouldn't become more efficient at what you do, that's just, it's penny wise and pound foolish.
But maybe that was, I'm just trying to elaborate on what the person is meaning. So I don't know if it's true what I'm saying. I'm just saying that one of the things that you could argue or speculate over in that perspective is, as you say, if you have a house and you put locks on the door, and let's say that you put a security camera on it as well, you feel pretty safe because you know that what you see is what you get, kind of thing, right? But the more computers, the more software, the more things you basically know. One of the things I think that both of us have been writing about a lot is how also the Industry 4.0 requires a completely new skill set with people that are really going into this direction. It's not just a pre-press thing anymore. It's a highly skilled computer security as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting. I think if you look at a lot of the hardware manufacturers, digital press manufacturers now, whether it's Konica Minolta or Ricoh or Canon, and you look at their offerings now, you will notice that some of the software, some of the services that they offer are security services. And they're doing that because they recognize that. And there are other companies that also do that. These are services that you can, just like you can get a service to help take care of your business in the cloud, which, by the way, is a lot more secure than doing it locally. All of this is this is like saying, I don't want to go in the cloud because I know that it's not secure. It takes too long. Meantime, there are people who are now using the cloud for production. I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago who has Kodak Printergy in the cloud. And I said, but are you actually ripping the files in the cloud and sending the ripped data? I'm thinking of these huge 1-bit TIFFs for an 80-inch plate through the pipeline to your plate maker. And he said, yes, absolutely. And I'm not having any problem.
Wow.
So come on, guys.
But David, in that respect, we also got a question from Steve McCarthy. I will get back to you in a second, Steve, but just in that perspective, because I have a question because I think that if you look at the cloud-based solutions, right? For example, Tilia Labs, as far as I remember, their cloud-based solution is basically that it has like a cloud connection. And then basically you still have local software because you need to do the imposition. You need to have the security that it can produce regardless of internet connection and speed and those kind of things. So do you think that this kind of hybrid is where it takes it the first step? Because I have been in the US as well many times, and I know for a fact that you also have different qualities of internet, right? So obviously you become more dependent on the infrastructure in case that you are, posting everything to the cloud, right?
Absolutely. And my son-in-law works for a financial services company, and they have a lot of stuff in the cloud, but they have a lot of stuff locally as well. And they have to, part of a regulated industry. So, there's technology that you have to deal with the realities of where you are. One size doesn't fit all.
No, that's true.
To build it smart. But as I said, there are people out there, there are people out there, not just me, but there are people out there who have done this before that can help you if you don't have the necessary internal skills, or even if you have the internal skills, but you don't have the bandwidth. And I see that a lot. People are too busy, as I said before, they're too busy doing production. They don't have the time to think about how they're going to develop the next plan.
And saying that, I was just about to make a little commercial for the next session, because I don't know if you've seen that, but that is with Diego Diaz. And he is actually going to do a live presentation of all the workflow software that he believes can build your factory. So if you have any questions in that relation in just 15, 17 minutes, we are digging into how it actually works in real life. So that is fantastic. Let's get back to the question from Steve. He's asking here, if you were starting out in the print world, which path would you take, SMC?
If I was starting out in the print
world. SMC, sorry, so that was his initials. So it was
wide open question.
Stupid Europeans, right? I mean, they don't even understand initials, right? No, if you were starting out in the print world, which path would you take? And I think that what Steve means is basically, if you are not in the smart factory right now and you are going in that direction, so how to get started and where to maybe also find information that is relevant for you.
Well, I mean, I think if I were going to start in the print world, I would look at buying a digital press. As a matter of fact, probably be a lower barrier of entry to go that way. I would look at and make sure that communication, inter-machine communication is there. I would make sure that whatever I do to use and build to communicate with my customers, and whether it's some kind of as I said, some kind of a web to print type of solution. I would make sure that the cloud, if I can use it, if I'm in an area where there's good internet, and if I'm not, and I'm doing printing, then that obviously I'm limited in terms of what I can do. But that has to be part of the equation. You have to think about that. If you're starting a new business, you know, that's a wild card. I've started 6 businesses in my life, and sold them, and each one was a little bit different. But you know, you have to think about it. It's not just something, you know, when you wake up one day and go, yeah, I'm going to start a business. You know, what do you want to do? Why? You know, do you understand enough about what it is at a very basic level to even do that? So that's a hard question to answer. But I think that I would try to look at where things are going. You know, as they say, you know, you want to look at where the puck is going, not where it is.
But in that perspective, David, I think that as you know, we did this smart factory similar to this event in Europe a month ago, and I think that one of the questions that occurred in the discussions we had was also like, the smart factory is not a question if, it's a question when, right? And it's now, and it's basically, if you're a printing company and if you're not thinking of this, you may not even survive.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. And that goes back to what I showed at the beginning. I said there are certain drivers, there are trends that are driving a need for a smart factory. Yeah. And competition is one of them. Yeah. And if you don't have the most efficient organization, right? If you don't have the most efficient organization, how do you compete in a very competitive environment? You can only do it for so long. And what are you going to keep reducing your prices till you don't even cover your expenses? You know,
I think it's called democratization of prices, right? I mean, it's a mantra that we look at commodity products. If you can't add value elsewhere in the production process and in the value to the product, then basically you're stuck to something. And you know, I wrote an article a year ago which was about that the bigger the printing companies become, especially the commodity and online printers, they become more like factories. And then you can ask yourself, where does the value creation change to, right? Because you may end up in a situation where it's the designers, it's the creatives, it's the companies that now start building services around this, just delivering a feed into a printing company, where it's essentially is only the price that becomes the real differentiator, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I was showing at the beginning, the printed.
Yeah, the relationship,
printed services. That's really what we're talking about. You know, the printed products. Yeah, it's always going to be, that's commodity based. It's always going to be very heavily cost driven. The margins are going to be tighter there. It's guaranteed. That's just the way it is. Yeah. On the other hand, the services part of it and you can still be a printer and offer printed services. Interestingly, a lot of the sign and display companies, that's what they do. They add value. It's not just a matter of buying an inkjet printer, a roll fed or a flatbed inkjet printer, and printing things. You got to do something with it. And each one of those things, especially in sign and display, is unique.
Yeah. And in that relation, because I think, I mean, you know, our good friend Deborah, she cannot, she cannot sit on her hands. So she, of course, also have a question. And it's a good one, actually. Here is, you said that buy a digital press, but she's asking the very clever question, to do what? And what segments? That is a good question, because, I mean, I read, for example, in the UK.
Well, okay. So, so I did a number of presentations for an event that was held here in the U.S. A few weeks ago called Printing United.
Yeah,
and
we have heard about it, right?
Yes, and I did a lot of presentations actually around just this topic, and what it looked at was, what are the areas that have the most competition? What are the areas that have the higher margins? And how do you then select based on that, and growth? And what are the areas of the most growth? And it's basically, there's like these three points, and you need to, within that, decide where do you want to go? I mean, there's a lot more business in doing the commodity printing. There's a lot more commodity printing than there is in some of the others. But it's at a lower margin. Yeah. Is that what you want to do? Well, if you're very efficient at what you do, if you have
and they have volume.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. But if you're very efficient, that'll help you hopefully get the volume, because you'll have better costing and you'll be able to, sell it that way, etc. But that's that's one way to look at it. The other is, I can go into as I said, whether it's sign and display or it's textile printing or whatever, which are still relatively young, right? There's growth there. Not a lot of people in it. Is that an area where I want to go? I mean, those are some of the things you need to do, but understand that buying the piece of equipment is not enough to make you smart enough to understand the business.
No, that's true. Tomorrow, actually, we have I think it's close to a world premiere, because we went to France last week to film the AlphaJet from MGI. Based on the memjet printheads also, right? And the reason I mentioned this in this context is basically that the vice president and CEO, Victor Abigail, he was talking about this machine as a machine where you can do multiple things with limited operator intervenience, and then basically also add value. And if you don't add the value of enhancement or whatever you want to add to it, it is actually something that can drive the profits up. So that will be, I just saw the film, we just finished it an hour ago, so I think it will be very nice for you to see as well.
That has been a very exciting device for me. I've been following it since, I think it was 2012. I think I saw the first incarnation of the AlphaJet.
Yeah.
And talked to Victor and others at the brothers.
Of course.
About kind of where they saw it going, and I mean, it's a factory in itself, and you can basically configure it to the application that you want to develop. Remember, before I showed the bespoke, you want to make pouches? Here's a pouch manufacturing thing, and they understood that need.
Definitely,
back then. So that as they developed this press, this AlphaJet, and continued to develop the AlphaJet, it was developed with that in mind. That's it's a great piece of equipment.
Yeah, we have a question again from RRR CCC, and this time it's actually also a very good one, because how to implement Industry 4.0 in the newspaper industry.
Well, it's interesting. In the newspaper industry, first of all, the newspaper industry is a fairly automated business to begin with. If it wasn't, they would have folded already a long time ago. So I mean, I think that from a internal manufacturing standpoint, they've kind of got that part of it. Remember before I said you need collaboration internally, and you need, if you want Industry 4.0, you need collaboration externally. Well, now we start talking about business models. So if it's going to be external, so does that mean that as a newspaper, and you know, I don't know that the New York Times is ready to start allowing people to start publishing right out of Facebook to their paper. But you know, that would be I guess would be the next kind of thing, you know, getting involving this democratization of media to actually the manufacturing of newspapers. I don't know. You know, it's a long shot.
The last event I attended before the lockdown here in Europe was actually with the online print symposium with Bernd Zipper. And he gave a lot of, as always, good examples of how the smartphones and how you democratize the entire production process by involving people on, and that is, you know, you said in your presentation that maybe the market will get back to the 19th level, but I think that maybe there's opportunities that we still haven't seen, because I think that if you talk about the volume, maybe that can decrease, but the value is maybe increasing, because now it becomes one-offs, it becomes like something that is personal, it becomes less about how much ink you put on paper, but the value you create for the consumer. So maybe the industry have a renaissance where it can actually grow if you're good enough of combining the smart business models with the smart factory, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. The adding value is really the answer. You want to get more, the same amount of print, you want to be able to increase the value of it. And for sure, no doubt about it. I think that the other thing that we don't see in those charts, that we will see, and you'll hear probably, I would think you may hear about it from Memjet when they come on later in the week, is that, and I mentioned it before, is that the inkjet head is allowing print to become part of other manufacturing processes. So it's not like it's a standalone, which means it won't show up on those graphs. Okay, it's actually part of something else. Okay, it's not going to show up 3D manufacturing. The manufacturing of those print heads is not going to show up on that chart.
So, for example, if you have a, let's say, instead of having a supplier of in-mold labels, it will be part of the entire process of creating things. So you will never see that as part of the printing industry, because it just becomes something else, right?
Absolutely. Exactly.
David, you know, an hour flies by extremely fast when you're in good company. So I appreciate your time and your effort and your everything that you've been talking about here. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Before you leave, I just want to say to the audience, please go to the next session. You have I don't know if you have to sign up, but you have to follow the links we have sent in the presentations. And Diego will actually have 2 sessions in a row. So it's almost 2 hours of live presentation of workflow. I don't even know how many software licenses he has got during the past couple of months for preparing this, but I'm pretty sure you'll be amazed about what he is capable of telling and showing. So again, David, I hope soon to see you in person. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise, it's always good to see you, hopefully in person soon. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for your time here.
Morten, take care.